Good morning. My name is Tony. 1 year ago, at the age of 48, I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. When you're a mother of two beautiful girls, the wife to a wonderful man, and woman, fully engaged in her profession, that is the kind of news that is almost unbearable. You may be surprised to see someone so young with this disease, but the truth is this diagnosis began to affect me even before doctors had told me I had it. I knew something was wrong, something was off, a voice inside telling me that something just wasn't right. I am a registered nurse. I have worked as a floor nurse, a labor and delivery nurse. I ended my career in hospice. With all the professional skills and knowledge I have, it was easy to recognize something was really wrong. This realization ran into my personal life also. 2 years ago at Christmas, our family planned our holiday dinner, and it was going to be at my house. I did everything to prepare for the dinner. We set up the long tables and decorations and cooked a beautiful meal. We all got dressed up. And then nobody came. There was basically stunned silence on the other end of the phone. Then my sister said, "Tone, we decided you were going to be at my house. It was going to be at my house. We talked about it and when you were here. And that kind of hit me with a ton of bricks. I knew something was seriously wrong. I was convinced dinner was at my house. I had absolutely no recollection of the conversation with my sister at all. I confirmed what I already knew. Being a nurse, I needed answers. I also knew where to go, looking for them, and I found the right hospital and the right neurologist, someone that had worked with me professionally. But despite being a nurse, I was still a woman, a mother, a wife, and a sister, just waiting for a diagnosis. I got it. I was told that I was the face of what's known as younger onset Alzheimer's. You can imagine what this news did to my family. I'm a mom of two beautiful grammar school age daughters. They were just 9 and 12 when they had to start learning about early onset Alzheimer's. They are young girls, also scared about what this disease is. And like me, frustrated with watching time go by. Without answers to questions such as, when will mom be better? When will they find a cure or even a treatment? I've been married to my husband, Mike, for 16 years, and we've known each other for almost 20. Our future as a couple is kind of unknown at this point as a family. But my husband is slowly becoming both mom and dad, as well as our financial planner. I still drive, but I choose not to go far. The fear of getting lost is just too great. I still do some things a mom does. Unfortunately, that still does include, having to clean the house and, feeding the husband once in a while. But, I am grateful for every chore I can still do. I worry about not being able to plan my daughter's proms, graduations, weddings, but I refuse to not fight against this disease. But here's the real irony. When I have asked to sign up for most clinical trials, I am told I am too young to participate. I have to wait until I'm at least 50. Each day that I am not in a trial, I wonder what doctors could have learned from me and those having this disease so young. I refuse to live my life in silence about having this disease. Many feel too ashamed to actually talk about it. I refuse not to believe in a professional future. So I continue to renew my license every year in the hope that there will be a cure. As you probably can tell, I have refused to take this diagnosis lying down. I've been a volunteer with the Alzheimer's Association. I'm an advocate for spreading awareness about this disease. I have been to the state capitol and gone on television and radio to share my story with whomever will listen. I'm using my voice for as long as I can. I'm an advocate for those who cannot. Please learn about this disease. Please advocate for research. I hope you will join me today in the fight for our first survivor. I usually just say thank you, but I also want to add, I choose to live without fear.
Thank you, Tony, for that very, very moving story, and thank you for not being silent and for sharing your story, this very important story about a very important issue with this room. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here today. My name is Nancy Dubuque. I'm the CEO of Lifetime A&E Television Networks, of which Lifetime is a part of. Lifetime has a long history of advocacy for women. Advocacy for women has never been more important, and our part in that is an incredibly proud aspect of my job. We have a long history of advocating for women around breast cancer, around domestic abuse, around AIDS, around homelessness, and being able to use that platform to shine a light on an issue that women can galvanize around and women can change. It's, as one of the few women CEOs in media, it's a real honor to be able to use that power to do that. It's probably never been more important to use that power to do that. And one of the people that I've always looked up to as using her power in an incredible way of advocacy, unashamed, brave, very strong, but always with a cutting sense of humor, is Maria Shriver. I can't think about a more passionate and enthusiastic advocate for women's health and for Alzheimer's. When Maria came to speak to me about it, it's quickly personal for all of us because the statistics are troubling. The way it affects women and the way the media portrays Alzheimer's is troubling, and we can do something about it. And so thank you all for being here today. Thank you for coming together to think about how we can galvanize around this issue. And without further ado, I would like to introduce Maria.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for being here today at this Women's Health Summit. It starts with the brain. When Nancy and I talked about doing this, we weren't sure whether people would be interested in the brain, and we were so excited to get such a positive response. And people were in LA were saying, why aren't you doing this in LA? Why aren't you doing this here? Why aren't you doing this there? So it tells me an exciting thing that people really want to learn about their brains. They want to know what's going on up here. So I want to thank you for taking time from your really busy schedules to be here. Nancy, I've known Nancy for a really long time, and I want to thank her in front of everybody here for having the guts to step into this issue. This isn't an easy issue to get behind. I've been kind of working on it for 14 years, and I've often thought about why does corporate America not get more involved? Was it because it was about women? Was it because it was about age? Was it because it was just depressing and scary? Probably all of the above. And when I sat down with Nancy, I said to her, look at Lifetime as the preeminent women's network. This is the preeminent women's disease. It's the preeminent women's empowerment disease. You can't go to women's conferences and learn how to brand yourself and hashtag yourself if you don't have your mind. You can't go to doing all the things that we talk about if you're 24 hours a day caregiving for a parent. And she said, look, we have a history of stepping into issues that other people don't want to step into. And we're going to join forces with you with Move for Minds, which we do with Equinox. And we're going to change this disease. We're going to change the perception of it. And we're going to educate the greater public about it. So I want to thank you for your courage, for seeing your platform and seeing a disease and really a movement that you could make a difference in. So I want to thank you so much for that. To Tony, I don't know where she went. Oh, there she is. That took a lot of guts. And I want to say how brave you are, how inspiring that was to me. It reminded me of the scene from Still Alice that I was the executive producer on, where this incredibly bright woman at the height of her career, was following her lines. And I think we forget how scary public speaking is for most people. And to stand up here and do that with Alzheimer's because you want your voice to be heard. You want people to see that it's not something that just happens to somebody at the end of their life, but it's something that is happening in incredible numbers to women who are at the center of their lives, the center of their families' lives, who are just getting that C-suite office. And it's because of women like you that people are doing a double take about what this disease is and isn't, and how they can think about their brains perhaps in a different way. So I want to thank you for your courage and your willingness to speak here today. So, yeah, thank you. So Nancy and I, we wanted to do this on November 1st because today is the beginning of Alzheimer's and Awareness Month, caregiving as well. It was deemed that by Ronald Reagan, who was probably the first person that most people knew of as having Alzheimer's. My dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2003. I was in the midst of a political campaign. I was a journalist, and I knew nothing about Alzheimer's, thinking it was something that happened to people when they were 80 or 90. And thus began my crusade, my mission to really find out more about this disease. And the more I found out about it, I realized how uninformed we were as a country, how uninformed we are, particularly as women. And it became my mission to educate women, make them aware of it, and raise funds to research women, because what I came to realize is that no one was doing any research on women, and yet every 66 seconds a new brain was being diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and 2/3 of those brains belonged to women, and no one knew why that was. So I was like, hello, it's not sexist to study women, it's just smart because they're at the epicenter of it, and we should do that. And so that's the reason we wanted to do it on this day. We also just released a poll with the Bipartisan Policy Center, who are here today, about the state of Alzheimer's and caregiving in our country. This was an idea that Olympia Snow came to me about, and the results are pretty shocking. We have not only a crisis of awareness about this disease and about caregiving in our country, but we have a mind-blowing knowledge gap about it. Majority of people want a loved one or a child to take care of them if they get Alzheimer's or another disease, yet no one has that conversation with their kids. Nobody. Nobody has any knowledge of what the finances are around a disease like Alzheimer's. Who pays for it, how much it costs, how long, what they have in their bank account, how long that will take care of them. Millennials, the most nervous and anxious about it. Overwhelming number of people think, well, if I don't have the Alzheimer's gene, I can't get it. Big misconception. People think if I have the Alzheimer's gene, I'm going to get it. Big misconception. African Americans show they're not worried at all about it, and yet they're twice as vulnerable as anybody else. The kind of misconceptions go on and on. The lack of knowledge goes on and on. But what was really exciting to me was that 68% of women polled said, if I knew what to do, I would do it. I just don't know what to do. Millennial women being the most open, the most interested in their brains, because they're reporting highest levels of stress, anxiety, and depression, and they think that's a physical thing. They don't even associate it with their brains. And so to me, as a journalist, and there's so many great journalists in this room and people who have incredible platforms to educate and inspire people, there's a huge opening with that. People want the information, they just don't know where to get it or what to do. So that's what today is really about. It's about educating everybody in this room. I hope it's about inspiring you to write about it, use your platforms, pass it on, and to get you to think about your brain perhaps in a whole new way. And so if everybody would just for a moment put their hands on their head. I just want people, that's your brain in there. Yeah, it's your brain in there. And I hope that after today, when you look in the mirror every morning when you get up, you don't just look at, like I do, oh my God, this is wrinkled, this is sagging, I'm pulling my face, but think about this inside of here, and that this needs your attention, because what you eat affects this, how you sleep affects this, whether you exercise or not affects this. Everything you do, how you worry, whether you meditate or not, what you put in your body, it all affects this. And this begins to change when you're 30. And for women who are perimenopausal and menopausal, the changes here are dramatic, capital D, dramatic. And even though it's probably, my mother would say, unattractive to say at lunch or out in public, when you lose your period, that's not just your physical body changing, that's your brain changing. That's your brain changing. So when women used to say, like, I'm perimenopausal and I feel kind of crazy or foggy, that's your brain. But the exciting thing is that the researchers who are joining us here today are going to be able to give you information that I hope you will take out from here today and begin to implement in your own life. Because I want to repeat again, every 66 seconds, a new brain is getting Alzheimer's, and 2/3 of those brains belong to women. And 2/3 of all the caregivers in our country are women, and those are women who are at the height of their careers, rearing children, trying to manage families, taking care of parents, and they don't know what to do. So as I said to Nancy, and as I said here, this is a women's empowerment business. This is a women's empowerment mission because it affects you financially, cognitively, spiritually, emotionally, physically. There's no part of your life that this disease does not touch. So if you have a parent who gets it, a mother-in-law, a father-in-law, a cousin, a sister, your whole family gets it. And one thing I've also learned from doctors is that when you see one case of Alzheimer's, you've seen one, and everyone develops differently. And it is a form of dementia, a form of cognitive impairment. And what Tony was saying, that she was too young for clinical trials, what's exciting is that's all changing. Researchers are now beginning to look at women at 40. They're beginning to look at women at 45 and 50. This is new because people are noticing, doctors are seeing that cognitive impairment, mild cognitive impairment changes begin at that age. So I'm really grateful to all of you. We're going to try to move this day really quickly. You're going to get a brain guide that we've developed from the Women's Alzheimer's Movement that's in your packet. I hope you'll take it home, read it. It's easy. Put it next to the toilet, pick it up, think about it. It's that kind of reading, just little things for you, little bullet points. And this panel today is designed to also give you bullet points, and then we're going to try something really kind of, I think, hip and cool. It's called the 66-second wrap. People are going to get up at different tables, and for 66 seconds, they're going to stand up and tell you what they want you to know about Alzheimer's, and they're going to do it in 66 seconds. Why? Because every 66 seconds, a new brain develops Alzheimer's. So I really want you to remember that. And so I want to ask to come up to the panel, Dale Bredesen, who is a good friend, just written a best-selling book called The End of Alzheimer's. Very controversial, but very revolutionary about his approach. Come on up, Dale. Nikki Likandakis, whereas Nikki, who's the CEO of Equinox. Equinox has been our partner in this long before anybody else with Move for Minds, and one of the first corporations to come forward and say, we believe in this issue. Nikki, both of her parents have Alzheimer's, had Alzheimer's, so she knows this firsthand, and they have taken their company and put a full focus on trying to help us understand our cognitive health. Sit down. Martha Claire Morris, where are you? The inventor of the Mind Diet is going to talk to us a lot about what we eat today. What you're eating today is okay. What you are eating today, eat away. But she is the author of The Mind Diet. We hear a lot about heart-healthy diets. There's such a thing called the Mind Diet. It does impact what you eat, does impact your brain. Also, Lisa Mosconi, whereas Lisa, there she is. She's going to come up here. She's from Cornell while here in the city, works at the Alzheimer's Prevention Clinic with my great friend Richard Isaacson. I did a story on him today on the Today Show about women and Alzheimer's and all the strides that he is doing, studying young women and trying to find out what we can learn as our bodies age. So what we can learn from them. Who am I forgetting, Dale? Bob Roth, my great friend. Where is Bob? Oh, there he is, way over there in the corner. Bob Roth, who runs the David Lynch Meditation Foundation. my meditation teacher, and I think the teacher of several people in this room. There's a lot even in Dale's book and others about the benefits of meditation on the brain, why it's so important to have that as a practice. For you, Mark Milstein, Dr. Mark Milstein, I don't know where he is, who is from California, is an expert on the gut and the brain, as we're hearing a lot about the gut being our second brain. Some people say it's your first brain, but I want you to think about the gut and how it affects the brain and vice versa. They've all come from, some have come from the West Coast, some from here, to really talk to you about their areas. We're going to talk to them for about 25 minutes and then open it up to questions. So maybe you could be thinking about what part of this is of interest to you, what is cutting edge to you, and things that you might be able to do starting now in your own life that might change your own cognitive health. So now let's go over here. Can you hear me? Okay. I want to begin, thank you all for joining us, everybody here today. I want to begin, Lisa, with you because you've just done a big research study on women and their brains. And as I said, when I first started in this space, people told me the only reason women had Alzheimer's more is because they live longer, not. Then they told me, oh, well, we don't research women's brains, and women's brains aren't different. And we now know that that's not the case. So what can the women in this room and the men in this room know about the brain changing and how it affects women in particular?
So for many years, we've been working on the early detection of Alzheimer's disease and how sex specifically affects risk and progression and onset. And for me specifically, I've been doing brain scans. I do brain imaging. That's my background. And we've been following patients for up to 20 years. And so we can really see progression from normal cognition to mild cognitive impairment, like you mentioned, and then ultimately dementia. And what we find is that women age faster. There's something that happens in your brains when, and by aging, I don't mean when you're 70 or 80. I mean when you're in your 40s.
So just pause a second. Women age much faster, starting in their 40s.
In the 40s. There's something like a tipping point that really correlates with hormonal changes. And you mentioned the study in perimenopause and menopause. What we found is that estrogen is not just about being fertile. Estrogen is about neuroprotection. So as your estrogen goes down, your brain loses that layer of protection that your hormones are given to you as a woman. And that really makes your brain more vulnerable and more delicate to aging and harm and diseases like Alzheimer's. So we found that women who are perimenopausal and menopausal show accelerated brain aging as compared to men of the same exact age.
So women get so many conflicting messages about what they should do to protect their bodies, about hormones, that they're told if they take hormones, they'll get cancer. Now there's a lot of discussion about maybe you should take hormones to protect your brain health. I looked at some of your images that show somebody who's perimenopausal in their 40s and 50s, and then they're menopausal, and the change in their brain scan is dramatic. So what should women do?
50% loss of metabolic activity.
So what should a woman do who's trying to decide what to do?
Counseling, for sure. I think we need more information about treatments and available options. There's a lot of confusion about breast cancer, risk of cardiovascular disease associated with hormonal therapies. Not everybody knows that there are a lot of factors to consider before even starting such course of treatment. It's really important to make doctors aware that the treatments affect the brain as well, not just your reproductive status. It's not just about treating osteoporosis. They really have an effect on the brain. And I think a limitation is that, as you said, a lot of research does not distinguish between men and women. We tend to just lump everybody together to have power to look at something else. And it's really important, I think, for scientists to understand that we need to classify, we really need to look at men and women separately as well and understand what kind of risk factors a woman has. Because there's something about just being a woman that makes literally your brain age faster as you hit 40, 45. And the other thing is that every woman experiences hormonal changes differently. Some women just breeze through menopause. My mom just went right through it. It was fantastic. But other women really suffer, and they show neurological symptoms. They can't remember things. They have hot flashes. Hot flashes come from your brain, not from your ovaries. So there's a lot of information.
That's a
that we
huge,
need
believe it
to-
or not, misconception. People don't realize that these are cognitive changes. They think they're physical. Dale, let me go to you. As I said, Dale has just written this book called The End of Alzheimer's, and Dale's approach is that Alzheimer's, there's not going to be one drug. There's not one approach. But as he always says, there's 36 holes in the brain, and you have to try to plug all 36. And you have said recently to me that women are the centric part of this, and young women you're seeing now at the Buck Institute more and more.
Yes, so when I trained in neurology, and I've gone back and asked a number of my colleagues, when did we see women in their late 40s and early 50s? And we obviously heard from Tony today. When did we see this when we were training in neurology? And the answer is we didn't. We don't quite understand this yet, but in fact, there is what we're seeing as a hidden epidemic of women in their late 40s, early and mid 50s, who are developing a specific subtype, especially of Alzheimer's disease that we call type 3 Alzheimer's disease, which is associated with toxic exposures and associated with menopause, the exact thing that we just heard about from Lisa. When you have those changes in hormones, you change your ratio of the osteoblastic, the bone forming, of course, to the bone removing, the osteoclastic side of things. So you liberate things that have been sequestered within the bone for time. And that, I think, is one of the reasons, one of the parts of the answers potentially to your question about why is this so much more common in women. So we're seeing this more than we've seen it before. And we suggest that everybody get evaluated when they're in their 40s.
So people say one of the stories I'm doing actually tomorrow for the Today Show is how many people go to their primary physicians and don't get a diagnosis. They're told, you're stressed out, take a vacation. Don't worry, come back in a year. And you really believe, as do others, that it's really important that it become like a mammogram. You have a name for it.
Right. So we say that everybody should have a cognoscopy, right? Everybody knows, and I know Maria does not like that term because it's not attractive, as you said, as your mother said.
Yes.
But the reality is that we're all used to the fact that when we turn 50, what do we get? A colonoscopy. Everybody knows that. So in fact, when we turn 45, and especially if there's any family history, you want to know what is your status. And as we're hearing more and more and more, this is a systemic disease with a brain readout. It's not just a brain disease. You are literally responding to things. And so you want to know where you stand.
So the other thing to point out is this, Alzheimer's or cognitive impairment doesn't happen just like in a day. One of the other big misconceptions from the poll was that people weren't aware that it was 20 to 30 years actually building up in your brain. So for the people that are here, that are in their 40s or their 30s, they're at the right moment to be getting this information. They go to their doctor and say, I want a cognoscopy. The doctor's like, I don't know what that is. I've never even heard of that term. Well, what do?
So we've trained now over 600 practitioners from 7 different countries and all over the United States. We'll have 2,000 trained by the end of 2018. And I think that everyone is beginning to realize that we need larger data sets. 100 years ago, we were all dying of simple illnesses like pneumococcal pneumonia. We're now all dying of complex chronic illnesses. And I should say, on the average here, 1 to 2 people from each table will develop Alzheimer's disease. So this is a concern, and this should be, as with other complex chronic illnesses, cancer, cardiovascular disease, etc., this should be a rare illness if we do the right things ahead of time.
Which are?
Which are, get your blood tests, look to see how many people here know they're fasting insulin. Okay. That's one of the risk factors for all, okay? Dr. Isaacson, yes. So he knows the fasting insulin on about 400 people. So good. How many people know their ApoE status? Okay, a number of people.
Your ApoE status.
Yeah. How many people know your HSCRP? Okay. And how about C4A? Okay, so there's a whole set of things. Again, if you talk to a computer scientist and you said, we're going to have you, assess, our airplane, and we're going to give you serum sodium and serum potassium, the engineer would laugh at you. We have the problem, what we call the complexity gap. We have a huge problem. We're dealing with complex organisms. We are all complex organisms. But in general, our doctors check very, very tiny data sets, and people like Dr. Isaacson are changing that. We need to look at larger data sets, and this is true for cancer, this is true for cardiovascular disease, and absolutely true for neurodegenerative diseases.
So you can find, Dale's book is here. I want to ask Nikki, because Nikki and I met, as I said, through our Equinox partnership, which I'm grateful for. And Nikki has two parents dealing with this disease. And I spoke to her about, and one of the things that I should say that every doctor that I've gone to, and I've gone all over the country talking to people, irritating them, poking them and everything, they all said the number one thing that anybody can do right now is exercise. It is the most important game changer in anybody's life because the blood from your body goes up into your brain, and there are ways to train your brain. And so, Nikki, talk about what Equinox is doing, but before that, could you talk about what you experienced as a child of this and as a caregiver? Because, as I said, 2/3 of all women are caregivers.
Yeah, we know in hindsight, as a child watching my mother, she raised me and my siblings in an era where, exercise was to maintain a certain weight and to be thin. And what you ate was all about how many calories you ate and to be thin. And we grew up with this notion of caloric intake and, diet foods. And I was telling someone earlier, she loved Snackwells, if anybody remembers those horrible things.
They're still around.
Are they really?
Yeah,
Sorry.
they are.
I'm sure nobody
there might be
here
one in my
is.
pantry.
Yeah. But anyway, what we know at Equinox now, and what the research has shown, is that it's all about exercise, and particularly cardiovascular exercise. And what that does is increase the blood flow and the oxygen to the brain. And it's particularly effective if it's interval, which is high intensity followed by periods of recovery, that really benefits the brain. And tragically, the connection between that learning and my mother is, my father also passed away with early onset, but my mother, I can really see the connection between some of the ideas, the misunderstandings she had and where she ended up. She stopped exercising in her early 50s. She was extremely active, a dancer, and she taught dance, and a tennis player and a swimmer. And in her early 50s, when she retired, she just stopped moving. And she thought that by sitting around doing crossword puzzles, she was keeping her brain active. Her younger sister was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in her early 60s, and her best friend was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in her early 60s. And we were close to both. So when my mother got diagnosed, we knew what was to come. So this has been of particular interest to me. So the movement piece, as opposed to just learning, and keeping the brain active is effective. And what we know is, in particular, primal movements, primitive movements, things like handstands, or what's called a beast crawl, which is particular type of crawling, that these things are particularly effective, and that learning to move the body in ways that we move in certain planes of movements, the way we move every day, makes a difference, and that's really important. So at Equinox, and through our partnership with Maria, what we've been working on in the Move for Minds program that we've implemented has been around creating particular types of movement and exercise, and specifically Move for Minds class that our Tier X, our top tier trainers created for brain health, is something we're working on and talking about doing more consistently across all of our clubs throughout the year, and trying to encourage younger people to pay attention to this,
because people don't realize that they can even get a cognitive trainer, that you can go into the gym, right, and not only fix your biceps or your triceps, but you can actually train your brain simultaneously. So this is going to be a new wave of exercise, and to really start thinking about about it yourself, about, as Dr. Isaacson always says to me, are you getting blood into your brain? Are you exhausting your heart rate? Or are you still texting on the treadmill?
Right.
And that would be still me on the treadmill. But I
it's not-
espouse all this stuff, so it's very important. But I think that that's a huge thing. Also, Martha coined the mind diet phrase. So we talk about the importance of exercise and then, of course, the importance of food. Some people refer to Alzheimer's as stage 3 diabetes, the effect of sugar on the brain. And people say, like, now we're hearing a lot about fasting, intermittent fasting. I'm doing a story on the Today Show on that on Friday. Is that the best way to wake up your brain? Or, you know, is it the Mediterranean diet to live to 100? Martha, can you eat to wake up your brain, your mind?
Well, you can certainly eat to preserve your brain and to keep it functioning even in your younger years at its optimum levels. We've learned a lot about Alzheimer's prevention, and we've done it through at my university, at Rush University. We have very large studies of more than 10,000 people living in the community. And we've found that what's good for the heart is also good for the brain. And if you think about it, so many of the heart disease conditions, high cholesterol level, high hypertension, diabetes, heart attacks, strokes, those all increase your risk of Alzheimer's disease. Every single one of those conditions can be prevented and treated through diet and exercise. So diet and exercise, I would say together, really are the two key components to keeping your brain young and functioning well in your younger years, all the way through middle age and into your older years.
But tell people here, if they could do 2 changes leaving here today with their diet, what would they be? Because there is a huge confusion in the eating space. I mean, as I say, we're being told eat paleo, eat vegan, eat plant, you know, don't eat at all. You know, that's what I'm hearing now all the time. Fasting, do not eat. Only eat every other day, or don't eat from 8 to 12. And I'm like doing all kinds of things. I don't know what I'm doing. So seriously, I don't. One minute I'm being told
step
to eat all
1,
protein. Eat. Yes, this is true.
Yeah, so there's so many common components in the cardiovascular and the dementia research for what are the best foods and what's the best diet to protect your brain. And so it's a plant-based diet with low fried foods, low saturated and trans fats. So that means, you know, getting rid or limiting your pizza and for fast foods. So I was posed this question of one thing to eat. Yeah. And so I thought very hard about that. And so I thought, eat a salad every day. Eat a green leafy salad with kale or romaine or spinach or all of those and their arugula. And then put on it at least one other vegetable, carrots, sweet peppers, radishes, tomatoes. Throw on some nuts and seeds. Throw on some berries. And then you can alter it every day by maybe adding some salmon one day, or chicken another day, or beans another day. But eating that one green leafy salad provides you with so many of the healthy foods, including extra virgin olive oil. If you put a tablespoon or 2 on of an extra virgin olive oil based salad dressing, you have almost all of the components of the mind diet in that one meal. So
a lot of focus now, and Martha has a new book coming out in a couple of months, which is, you know, the next phase of the mind diet, to tell you what to eat for your mind. And that brings me to you, Mark, because Mark is a specialist on the gut and its connection to the brain. And we're hearing now more and more the gut is the second brain, or actually the gut is the first brain, whichever is the right way to look at it. What can people here today learn about their brain through their gut, and vice versa?
That's a great question. So this is really one of the most fascinating areas of science right now, is how does our gut impact our brain? And so we always thought about it this way, that, for example, let's say you get stressed or you get worried, and that's happening in your brain, and then all of a sudden your stomach clenches up, that your brain is talking to your intestines or your stomach. That's true. But what we're also realizing is that our gut is talking to our brain, that things are happening in our gut. Specifically, what we're learning is in our gut, there's trillions of bacteria. In fact, you're about 37 trillion human cells, at least an equal number of bacterial cells. I hate to break it to you, but you're half human, half bacteria. That's the way it is. And all that bacteria in our gut is talking to our brain. It's sending signals to our brain. So anxiety, we're looking at PTSD, a long list of conditions where we believe that bacteria plays a role in sending signals to the brain and informing the brain and giving brain information. So somebody might be feeling anxious, and that could be happening from bacteria in their gut. Just one other quick thing is, just a few days ago, there was a study that came out, looked at people with Alzheimer's disease, and they found that individuals with Alzheimer's disease have different types of bacteria in their gut than individuals who do not have Alzheimer's disease.
So how do you just take a probiotic and it's all good, or what? How do people actually change the bacteria in their gut, and how would they know that that has a positive effect on their brain? Or can they do meditation, which Bob will speak about, and will that have a positive effect on their gut?
Yeah, so what we're learning is that it's not the simple answer of what we wish it would be, that just take this one pill, this one supplement, and that's going to be the magic thing you're missing that's going to give you the right bacteria. We understand there's good types of bacteria and there's bad types of bacteria, and it's a really complex mix in each individual. So just turning to a supplement doesn't seem to be the answer, especially if you're healthy. Now, if you have a pre-existing condition or disease, there's cutting-edge research that's looking at supplementation that can be effective. But for the general population, what we're really looking at is, we understand now that certain types of foods feed our good bacteria. So everything we eat feeds the bacteria in our intestine. The good bacteria like to eat certain types of food.
Like what?
So the good bacteria loves fiber, indigestible fiber. If you look at your plate and you see colorful vegetables, apples, bananas, asparagus, there's a long list. Those are called the prebiotics. Those are the foods that we want to feed the good bacteria. We want to give them the food and the nourishment so they can survive, and they can send the signals that we want to be sent to our brain to protect our health.
So a lot of people here on media work at magazines. What can magazines or the media do that we're not doing in terms of educating people about the correlation between their gut and their brain?
To be aware of it, to be aware that our gut health plays a significant role in so many aspects of our health. It plays a role in our immunity, how we fight off viruses. When we get our flu shot, there's studies that show that our gut bacteria can play a role in how well we respond to that flu vaccination. It responds to so many aspects of our health. So being aware of it, and then making some really simple steps. So there's so much complexity here. So I like to take all the data and all the research and break it down into a couple questions you can ask yourself when you're looking at your food.
What?
A couple questions you can ask yourself are, does my food spoil? It should spoil at some point. I was in a museum the other day, they had a Twinkie from 25 years ago. That's not the type of food that we want for our gut. That's
so
the types
look
of
at
food.
look at
Right,
the food there
yeah.
and say, can it spoil?
Does it live and die? It should live and die eventually. The second question is, when I look at the packaging, is there a long list of ingredients that don't sound like food? And if it says yellow number 5, I don't know what yellow number 5 is. Your good bacteria has no idea what yellow number 5 is. Long lists of chemicals that you can't pronounce. If you can't pronounce it and it doesn't sound like food, very likely it's not what the good bacteria likes to eat. And those are really some very take-home things that we can just make a step forward and look at to make a positive step in the right direction.
Bob has changed people's lives through meditation and his teaching all around the country. He's my meditation teacher. But what even Dale talks about this a lot in his book, The End of Alzheimer's, we're now seeing the effect of meditation being as important as sleep on the brain, because the brain, while you're meditating, clears stuff in the brain, right? So, Bob, how are you working with people and seeing changes in the brain through meditation?
Well, I think what we're talking about, what are the tools in a toolbox? I teach transcendental meditation. I know you talk about that. What are the tools in a toolbox? And we do try and eat properly, and we do exercise, but how many people here meditate on a regular basis? How many of you exercise on a regular basis? So that's the missing element here. Soon that all the hands have to go up for meditation, because we exercise or we eat, and that's dealing with it from the neck down. And meditation, properly understood and practiced, is connections from the neck up. And so what we're doing with transcendental meditation is a simple, effortless technique that is very easy to learn and practice. And this isn't, I don't have the time to go into all the other types of meditation, but it allows the mind and body to take a very profound state of rest at will, and it's enjoyable to do. And what you see is a 30 to 40% reduction in cortisol levels, which is absolutely, cortisol, too much cortisol is deadly. It improves the connections between the front of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, and the back of the brain, the occipital. It calms the amygdala. So the whole mind and body and brain, and it increases blood flow and therefore oxygen to the brain. So it has a complete transformation, and I think it needs to be, just one last thing, it's good for us to do it in our 30s and 40s, but what the foundation is doing is bringing to kids who are 5 and 10 years old, because that's where it all starts.
Bob, so you're going into Wall Street and all these other companies who are asking you to come in to build meditation rooms, put it as a part of the work life, because people are so stressed out. The piece in the New York Times, kids reporting highest levels of anxiety in history. Are you finding like people are going like, I can't control my mind, I can't deal with my mind, I can't deal with the life I have, I'm on the computer 24 hours a day, and I need help?
I think the main thing is this degree. I've been teaching this for 45 years, since I was 60. No, that's it. Meditation, very powerful. No, I've been teaching it for 45 years, and for 40 years or 35 years, you couldn't even mention the name meditation in polite company. But I think there's so much data now that shows that it does work. I think the main question, the skepticism people have is, I don't think I can do it. My mind is so busy, I can't control my mind. And so I want to say, there's not one type of meditation. There are different types of meditation that can appeal to different types of people. And the analogy I use, do I have time? Yeah. Okay, the analogy I use to explain this, to make it less abstract, is you're on a little boat and you're in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And all of a sudden you get these 30, 40-foot high waves. And you could easily feel, oh my God, the whole ocean is in upheaval. But if you could do a cross-section of the ocean out there, you'd realize you got these little 30-foot waves, but the ocean is a mile deep. And while the nature of the ocean can be turbulent on the surface, the nature of the ocean is silent at its depth. And the mind, by analogy, is the same. The surface of our mind is the gotta mind, the monkey mind, the 8 million things I have to do. And if a meditation tells you to stop that, to clear your mind of thoughts or control your mind, that's like trying to stop every wave on the ocean. No can do for most people, unless you live, in the Alps or the Himalayas. So self-transcending, the technique that we teach, recognizes there's a vertical dimension to the mind, that we're not just superficial. We have a sense, I feel something deeply. I know something in my gut. So there's a vertical dimension, and we hypothesize that there's a level of your mind right now, deep within, that's already calm. Just like the ocean, already settled there, like depth. And this meditation, TM, just gives access to that effortlessly. So you don't have to push out thoughts. You don't have to clear your mind of thoughts. So someone like Maria or Gail or Nancy or anybody here who have learned, it's very simple to do. And I would just recommend do something. Whether it's TM or something, but do something. It's not a luxury anymore. We've heard it. You can't just get away without dealing with this part. And if you're doing a meditation that you don't like, find another one. Don't give up on it.
Okay, we want to, because we're very mindful of everybody's time, we want to open this up to questions, whether it's about the gut, meditation, exercise, food, hormones, or how to end Alzheimer's and supplements. Go at these people. Go ahead. Martha, do you want to take that?
I'm not aware of any scientific evidence to support that.
I'm not either.
Okay. So don't do that.
Who says that?
Go ahead.
Well, the dosage for transcendental meditation is 20 minutes in the morning. You get up 20 minutes earlier. It's better than sleep. People say, oh, God, I need my sleep, but it's better than sleep. 20 minutes first thing in the morning is a preparation for the day, makes you more resilient. And then sometime at the end of the day, on the train going home, at work, 20 minutes. That's the optimum. But a lot of people, Maria, you're doing once a day?
Yeah, I'm doing once a day in the morning. And if I can remember it, or I can find the time, I will do it. But I always do the morning, bar none. Other questions? Anybody? Go ahead. Correct. Well, that's a really good question. And what we're trying to make a big effort at the Women's Alzheimer's Movement to do things in Spanish, to reach out to the African American community. There's often, as I said, the doctors that they are seeing are not up to speed about cognitive health. They don't even know to ask about cognitive health. But by the way, nobody seems to know to ask about cognitive health. And there's still a lot of shame, as Tony talked about, around this. But we're not really, our primary doctors have not been set up. They did not learn to deal with this. So we need to, do a much better job of educating, of spreading awareness about what Alzheimer's is and isn't. We need to get people to focus on it in their 30s and 40s. We need to say to people like you who are, perhaps caregivers on deck or could take their mothers to the doctor and ask these questions. Talk about there's a SAGE test that you can do online that could give a cognitive baseline, and talk to the doctor on behalf of your parent. We're seeing a lot of that going on. Millennials changing their parents' diets, bringing their parents to the doctor, wanting to be educated but not really aware of what they should do, how they should go about it, what are the right questions to ask. So that's one of the big efforts of the Women's Alzheimer's Movement is education, awareness, and obviously research on women. But there's a whole host of reasons that none of us seem to be that aware of our cognitive baseline. Anything anybody want to add?
Well, and the disease is actually slightly different. In the Latin community, there tends to be, on average, more of a vascular component to the Alzheimer's disease. So yes, absolutely a good idea to know your numbers, including your lipid profile early on. So to include things like your oxidized LDL, all the things that will be telling you whether you have vascular risk factors in addition to other cognitive risk factors. There's published research showing that, yes.
Right. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Dale.
So
Marta.
if you designed a molecule to give yourself Alzheimer's disease, you'd be hard-pressed to make one better than sugar. It's almost the worst thing you can do. Number one, it actually causes inflammation. So the glucose, just like remoras on a shark, the glucose links on to many different proteins. And of course, we measure it as hemoglobin A1C, but it links to many other proteins. So that causes inflammation, which causes your brain to say, uh-oh, I'm under attack. I'm going to make amyloid to protect myself because it's an antimicrobial. And then what happens? You're running up your insulin. So you now, in fact, develop insulin resistance. We heard about the type 3 diabetes a minute ago. And so now you have a second input to your brain. You're now changing your insulin. So now what happens, your brain cells are normally very sensitive to insulin. And in fact, it's a great trophic factor. It supports your brain cells. Well, now you actually have chemical changes in the signaling pathway for the insulin, measured beautifully by Dr. Ed Getzel. And you could actually show that 100% of people who have Alzheimer's have alterations in this insulin signaling when you look in the brain. So for multiple reasons now, you are giving yourself. You also, of course, give yourself hypertension, metabolic syndrome, which also predisposes you to Alzheimer's disease. So you just go right down the list. It's literally the worst thing you can do. And the very fiber that we heard about earlier is one of the things that helps you to lower that. So that's one of the main things you want to stay away from.
Mark, do you want to add anything to that?
Right. So if we talk about that good bacteria loves to eat fiber, the bacteria we're concerned about, the bad bacteria, they love to eat the added sugar. And so when we feed them the added sugar, their population goes up. We have more of that bad bacteria in our gut, and they can cause inflammation. They can cause inflammation. They can change the lining of our gut, so more things are passing through the gut and getting into our bloodstream that shouldn't be there. Those things can eventually end up in the brain. So we realize that these added sugars that are filled into processed foods, that's where we have a real concern.
I hope we're not having any cake or cookies for dessert. Okay, other question? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I might comment. Our studies at Rush, we take community residents, and they're tremendous residents. They agree to be neurologically evaluated every single year for the rest of their lives, and it's a very extensive evaluation. And they also agree to donate their brains when they die. So we're able to look at people's lifestyle behaviors, their medical conditions, their neurologic development of Parkinsonian-like signs and Alzheimer's and stroke. And then we get to look at their brains, and we look at all the neuropathology in their brain. So we have a multidisciplinary team involved in all of those chronic conditions, and so that we can tease out what factors most likely lead to Parkinson's neuropathology or vascular neuropathology or Alzheimer's pathology. The truth is that the vast majority of the dementia are multiple neuropathologies. It's not clearly and singly the Alzheimer's amyloid plaques and neurofibrillary tangles.
Any other questions? Go ahead. Speak loud.
We know that the rise of consumption of sugar has contributed to much of what we're talking about. And I'm wondering about the parallel of the industrialization of food and the increase in disease. What is the relationship between them?
When you say industrialization, I'm responding, but I'm thinking of manufactured foods, of which is a large part of our food supply now. When foods are manufactured, not only are they including many components in there that are not part of the natural food supply, and we don't really understand what impact they have on the brain, but the manufacturers tend to put more salt, more sugar, and more fat, because those are what triggers the brain for pleasure. And they do it by processing in a way that's high heat. And this can actually produce substances called advanced glycation end products. Accumulation of these in the brain leads to oxidative stress and inflammation, and has been shown in some really interesting studies, especially in diabetic patients, to lead to a faster rate of decline in cognitive abilities. So this is a fascinating newer area of research to investigate these products that the manufacturing process uses. So I guess it all boils down to eating whole foods, and try not to eat those products that you see in the market.
Go ahead, in the back.
What happens when our
Good question.
The field of research on pesticides and the brain has a long ways to go. There's very limited information there for me to make a comment on that. The genetically modified foods, that's very difficult to study and to also in a large number of people so that we can... Because the larger studies where you can really get good estimates of the risk of developing Alzheimer's or dementia, you have very large studies. You can't, there just isn't enough money out there to devote to the research to get to the level of detail of the type of food that you are eating and its impact on the brain. Now, things like certain grains that might all come from one type of seed, if everyone's consuming that one type of grain, you have no variation to be able to see whether that component has an impact on the brain. So there's many scientific methodologic reasons that it's just difficult to get at that question.
Do you want to address that too, Mark?
Yeah, I think that was really well said, and the complexity of this is just so vast. I think where there's some headway being made is when we ask questions like, well, if somebody has a specific condition, like let's say they have Alzheimer's disease, is it possible that that individual who has Alzheimer's disease, which let's say is rooted in a gene, is that individual, if they eat food that's high in pesticides, is that person increasing, is that part of a risk factor? That's where we start to get some clear answers. And I think that we have some studies that do show that people have a specific type of gene that they can inherit that raises their risk of Alzheimer's disease. If they eat foods that are high in pesticides, that can raise their risk some more. It doesn't mean they're going to develop Alzheimer's disease. It just means we're always looking at risk factors and trying to get to these specific cases. When we look at general populations, the data just gets a little murky because we're all different. But that's where we want to go to, is where you have a specific condition. We want to personalize the treatment to the individual.
And everybody has been, every doctor all across the country, we are entering this age of personalized precision medicine, that every single person in this room is different. Every single person's brain and gut is different. And a one-size-fits-all approach to any of this is a thing of the past.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So we have time for one last question.
So what is, I'm going to be 55, my mom has it, I'm taking care of her, my dad has it. What do I do when I go to the doctors? Do I say, do I get blood work? What do I ask for?
I think that's a great question for Dr. Bredesen. I can add at the end, but I think that's a great question for Dr. Bredesen.
So first thing, I would suggest take a look at the book. There are some free copies right here at the end. Take a look at that. And there are specific things that you want to know because, as Maria said, you don't get this overnight. You know, you get this probably about 2 decades ongoing before you have a diagnosis.
My mom felt it.
Yeah.
She
And
came to me and said, I know there's something wrong with me. No one could figure out what was wrong with her.
absolutely.
She blamed it on her thyroid.
And that's one of many contributors. So as Maria said, it's 36 holes in the roof. You know, you want to know this is a complex chronic illness. It's not one thing. Genetics do play a role. Hormones do play a role, and so forth and so on. So you want to look at all of them.
So does stress. And you wanted to say one final thing, Bob?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, first of all, to thank you for
you're welcome.
bringing this together, this discussion. I consider myself educated, and I didn't know anything of this. The only thing I want to give an example. A man and his son came in to learn to meditate. They're finding out about it. He's 45 years old, and the guy started complaining that 40 minutes or even 20 minutes, I'm so busy. And this is going to talk about everything, exercise, 40 minutes, 20 minutes, my life. Where am I going to find the time? And he had like this 12-year-old kid who, pretty smart kid, he said, Dad, there's 1,440 minutes in a day. And you don't have 40 minutes for self-care. He used self-care. His mom must have given him that thing. But you don't have that. And so I'm just saying we have all this information, and yet what's come from this and what Maria's brought out is the antidote, the solutions, not ultimate, is very simple. It's lifestyle choices. It is the decision to eat properly, what to eat, what not to eat. It is the decision to act to exercise properly. It is the decision to take time, find a meditation that works. And so much of this can be ameliorated, isn't that correct, with some simple lifestyle changes?
Absolutely. And again, you want to know your biochemistry, and you see the changes in your biochemistry when you make those changes.
Well, I think, and we're going to, as the people change the microphones, and then we're going to do the 66-second wrap so we get everybody out of here on time. But what I'm hopeful that everybody takes away from this, one is that you think about your brain just the same way you think about your body. That's really important, that you feel empowered, that there are things that every single person can do leaving here today that will make a difference tomorrow. Whether it's in knowing the things that Dale spoke about, whether it's exercising like Nikki spoke about, whether it's what Martha's speaking about in terms of eating for your mind, just being conscious of eating for your mind, whether it's looking at your hormones and thinking, you know, I'm 40, I'm 45, I'm 50, this is changes in my brain. I need to think about that. It's not just my body that's changing, it's actually my brain. Meditation, a huge asset to anybody who wants to preserve their brain, protect their brain. And even if you're feeling some mild cognitive impairment, everybody I talk to is like, I can't remember this, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Meditating, finding time for self-care, as Bob talked about. And then as Mark was saying, your gut, being aware of your gut, listening to your body, understanding that it's connected to your brain. These are all tools to put in your toolbox. And also, I think, I hope in the brain guide that the Women's Alzheimer's Movement has put together are very instrumental things that you can do, that you can share with your parents. Really important, because as Bob was saying, he's an educated person and doesn't know this. The poll that we did that came out today, the crisis of awareness and the knowledge gap about this is astronomical. And a woman in her early 60s is twice as likely to get Alzheimer's in her lifetime than she is to get breast cancer. And women are ignorant, really ignorant, ill-informed, undereducated, whatever the right word you want to say. They don't know that this discriminates against them. And as Richard Isaacson, when I first went to see him, it's the way we stress out. It's the way we ruminate. It's the way we live our lives. It's the work we do. I had a conversation this morning with the producer at NBC, and she was like, I'm working from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. I can't meditate. I can't do any of the things you're talking about. I can't, and I'm miserable, and I hate my life. So I was like, whoa. I was like, I've been around long enough to know that when they fire you, someone's going to have your job in 30 seconds. So if you don't take care of you, right, this work is not your love life, right? It's not the most important thing. So I hope all of these people will be here to talk to you a little bit when this is over. I hope you will talk to them. They are the best and the brightest. They're on the front lines, and I want to thank them all. Some of them flew here from California to talk to you, to educate you, to inform you. And this is really important stuff, and we need everybody to be out there on the front lines. And as I said, in corporate America, Nikki, I want to thank you again. My friends from Cole Haan, I'm wearing my Cole Haan shoes, have stepped up into this business. A lot of cosmetic companies, others will not touch this issue because they think it's about old people, and it's like everybody's trying to get the 18-year-old. Well, that 18-year-old, there are more than 1 million 18-year-olds caring for parents with Alzheimer's. This is a disease that affects us all, and we can change it. Women really will, whether it's in the researching, whether it's the women who vote, the women who I testified in front of Senator Collins, asked me to come in because the president was trying to cut all the funding for research at NIH, and it was really her and others on that committee, as a bipartisan committee, the Committee for Aging, changed that and allocated the money for Alzheimer's research, but it's way below AIDS and cancer. So this is a political issue, it's a personal issue, it's a professional issue, and it's a public health issue. Just remember those 4 Ps with your 66 and with all the other stuff that we've told you. So we're gonna sit down. You're gonna go watch a video here for 2 minutes, and then we're gonna sit down. And the Rivet Revolution girls, wherever they are, we're going to sit down, you're going to watch a video, and then we're going to have our 66-second wrap thing. So
I was 36 years old when my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. It felt like my world was ending.
Chris was in her early 40s. She called herself a fighter. She would say, I'm not getting this, even though the symptoms were there, and it was her way of fighting it. So I just had to, be in healthy denial with her and say, that's great, okay, we're not getting it. Here, let me help you get dressed this morning.
My doctor told me the day I got diagnosed, I needed to eat well and exercise and recognize there's going to be good days and bad days, and boy, is that true. I mean, there's some days I don't even get out of bed till 11 or 12 o'clock. I think my kids feel like they've lost a little bit of me, and they're scared.
It is a relentless beast. And when someone in your family has Alzheimer's, the whole family has Alzheimer's.
When you're in your 50s and 60s being diagnosed, it's a tragedy. Alzheimer's is not an old person's disease. It is not anymore.
My husband, Paul, was diagnosed in his mid-50s. It's terrifying watching someone that you love and who is your partner and who is so young and vibrant, literally losing their mind.
Nowadays, I mean, younger onset is very prevalent. There's people in their 30s and their 40s, let alone 50s, that have it.
Alzheimer's for too long has been thought of as an old person's disease. What it's not been thought of is the greatest public health crisis that my generation has to face.
Had I not been so close-minded to think that it wasn't going to happen to us, we would have been better prepared. I do my best to take preventative action. We should all be eating a healthy diet anyway. We should all be exercising. We should all care about our brains.
If we as a generation knew what we were going to get ourselves into in the future, I think there would be more of a push into trying to figure out how this could be stopped. We have to find an answer.
Until we find a cure for Alzheimer's,
I'll keep fighting.
I will keep fighting.
It doesn't care how old you are.
Alzheimer's affects us all.
We're all in this together.
Now we're going to try this kind of cool idea. I hope it's a cool idea. 66 seconds. We're going to have 10 or 15 people are going to wrap around, give you something you need to know from their area that they want you to know that's really important. And I'm beginning with my friend Lauren Miller. 66 seconds. Go.
Oh, God. Okay. As you've heard, November is National Caregivers Month. As Maria said, I'm Lauren Miller Rogan. And I unfortunately know a lot about caregiving because my mom was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's at 55 years old when I was 25. Soon after, I founded Hilarity for Charity as a way to kick alls in the balls, as we say at Hilarity for Charity, and get young people to learn about the disease and raise awareness and, of course, raise money for it. Having had a front row seat to watching my father beautifully care for my mother, I saw how unbelievably difficult it can be to care for someone with this horrendous disease. So Hilarity for Charity created the Alzheimer's and Dementia Care Relief Grant Fund, and we have awarded over 200,000 hours of free at-home care to those who need it the most. 7 seconds less. Kick alls in the balls.
Hi, I'm Jessica, and at 34, I am a caregiver for my mother, Hilda, who has Alzheimer's. In 2014, an Alzheimer's diagnosis shook up our lives, and my father had to leave his job to care for my mother. After 7 years of trying to build a career with the National Park Service, I had to leave my job because of a lack of funding and a lack of ability to move around the country to where permanent jobs were. The frenzy of Alzheimer's led my family to Caring Kind and caregiver training, where we learned from Llewellyn's staff how to care for my mom with empathy for her and for her disease. Oh my God, I got 30 seconds left. My dad and I are still working on self-care. I'm a member of the Caring Kind Junior Committee, a group of young professionals dedicated to supporting research and Caring Kind programs, some of the ones that my mother and I participate in. And the compassion I found in the Junior Committee was outstanding. And it's a group of people, and we have parents, we have grandparents, we are personally taking care of relatives with Alzheimer's, and we do so much, and it's so great to be on social media using everything that I do, the Caring Kind with my mother, to I'm sorry, I ran out. Okay, I can finish up.
Hi, everybody. I'm an Alzheimer's prevention neurologist, and I hope there's going to be a lot of us in the future. I have 4 family members with this terrible disease, but I use this as my motivation to start the first Alzheimer's prevention clinic in the United States. There's now several all around the country. We've learned 4 things. I'm going to try to highlight them. Number 1, Alzheimer's is a younger person's disease. It means in their 30s and 40s, that's when the disease starts in the brain, and then they develop symptoms in 50s, 60s, and 70s. Remember that. Start young. We see patients age 27 and over. There's no one-size-fits-all. Thank you, Lisa Mosconi, for cracking the code with us, and we're going to be publishing some really exciting research soon. Number 3, genes are not your destiny. You can win the tug of war against your genes, not all the time, but a lot of the time, okay? And finally, education is key. Knowledge is power. If you want to learn every single thing that we've learned, that all of us can do today, not tomorrow, today, visit alzu.org, alzu.org. It's a free online course. It's free for everybody. Track brain function, join, share it with your friends, spread the word. We need millions of people to join this course. If you have a brain, join alzu.org. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Manley. I'm a neuropsychologist and an associate professor of neuropsychology in the Department of Neurology at Columbia University. My research is on disparities in Alzheimer's disease and dementia. As was mentioned before, African Americans are about 2 times more likely to suffer from Alzheimer's disease, and Latinos are about 1.5 times more likely than whites to suffer from the disease. And my work is focused on figuring out why that is, and what opportunities we have to narrow those disparities. One thing that we have found is that although hypertension, diabetes, accelerated aging, years of education, these are all risk factors for this higher rate of Alzheimer's disease in this group, it does not explain it. In fact, early life education is a key factor that explains this. So quality of education in particular, we have the opportunity through policy change to do something about this. Thank you.
I thought someone else was going before me. I hope that didn't eat into my time. I'm Sally Krawcheck. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Elevest, the digital investment platform for women. I was asked to give us 5 financial actions women can take to prepare themselves for the potential eventuality of Alzheimer's. So I started to write it. I wrote down buy long-term care insurance, give your financial details to someone you trust, give a power of attorney to someone you trust, make sure your legal documents are in order. But I was putting together the list. These numbers kept coming up for me. The odds of women being disabled are higher than their odds of dying prematurely. 90% of women manage their money on their own at some point in their lives, whether they want to or not. 80% of women die single, and women retire with 2/3 the money of men. We hear about the gender pay gap. I've been talking a lot about the gender investing gap. This cost women hundreds of thousands, for some women millions of dollars over the course of their lives. You talk about knowledge is power. I'll say money is power too, and we as women have less of it than the gentlemen do. And so what I would urge all of us women to do at an early stage of our lives is work on asking for that raise, close that gender pay gap, invest, be careful with your money, get that emergency fund set aside so that you are prepared with more money, because money is power if and when this happens to your family.
Hello, I'm Sheila Clem, and I'm a managing director at UBS. And Alzheimer's is very personal for me. My aunt has Alzheimer's. She was a rockette, an incredible powerhouse, and now fast forward, she's in a memory care facility where she will spend the rest of her life. UBS is deeply committed to working with patients and their families to ensure that a proper plan is in place. And that's exactly what you should do if you're diagnosed with Alzheimer's, or if you even suspect someone in your family has Alzheimer's. You should call your financial advisor and get a plan in place. You should bring in an attorney. And your 5 most important documents you can have in place is a durable power of attorney, a healthcare proxy, a living trust, a living will, and a last will and testament. And remember, planning, planning, planning. Hoping for the best is not a strategy. Take control. Alzheimer's can wipe out your brain, but it doesn't have to wipe out your finances.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lily Serafin, and I'm the CEO of Home Care Assistance. We're the nation's largest provider of in-home care for seniors with a mission to change the way the world ages. Every day we're on the front lines helping tens of thousands of families manage their care options, and half of the clients we serve have some form of dementia, the majority of them women. 3 of the ways that we're helping to elevate and address this issue are our cognitive therapeutics program, an industry-leading program that our caregiver employees are trained in, which leverages a lot of the research we heard here today about preventing and slowing the progression of various dementias. Also, our partnership with the Women's Alzheimer's Movement to provide family caregivers with respite grants so that they can take time off from caring for an aging loved one to manage their own health and wellness. And finally, our data science initiatives, where we're studying millions of interactions across our clients in 40 states so that we can help researchers and the broader healthcare ecosystem understand exactly what improves quality of life as well as clinical outcomes. I lost a very dear loved one this past Thursday who had advanced dementia. This is personal to all of us.
Hi, I'm Liz Jindro. This is one of my business partners, Susan Evans and Carol Palmer, and we are the co-founders of Rivet Revolution. Like many of you in this room, Alzheimer's is very personal to us. Susan is caring for her father, who is in the late stages of Alzheimer's. Carol's childhood family took care of her adopted grandmother and neighbor during her struggle with Alzheimer's. And I was the primary caregiver for my mom, who just lost her battle with Alzheimer's this past spring. We founded Rivet Revolution, which is a jewelry company on a mission, and we did it for 3 reasons. We wanted to spread awareness and spark conversations. We want to become the pink ribbon for Alzheimer's. We want to raise $1 million for fabulous organizations like the Women's Alzheimer's Movement and Hilarity for Charity. And we want to have some fun while we're doing it. We are in our 50s. Some of us are almost in our 60s. We are well on our way to having fun. We laugh every day, mostly at each other. We are well on our way to raising $1 million. And if each and every one of you would put the bracelet on that's at your place setting today, at least for today, we have raised your awareness. Hopefully we have sparked some conversations, and we hope in the end you will all join us in this revolution.
Hello, I'm David Maddox with Cole Haan. Some time ago, we created advertising with 4 extraordinary individuals, including Maya Angelou, all born in 1928, the year Cole Haan began. At the shoot, Miss Angelou gathered the young women on set to share the memories of her life at their age. This was important to her so that these young women might learn something from her story. Earlier this year, in talking with Maria Shriver, she made it clear how important it is for her to share her stories with her daughters. This led to our involvement in Move for Minds at Equinox. It made sense. One extraordinary generation joining forces with another. Sweat exchanged for encephalic equity. Cole Haan spans 5 generations. Our history is our guide to our future. We believe everyone with an extraordinary story to tell needs a place to tell it. We all have a stake in safeguarding the storytellers, the medical community, legislators, educators, journalists, banks, and corporations. For in the end, these are not the forgotten memories of a stranger's past. These are the docents of our collective future.
I'm Sally Quinn. My husband, Ben Bradley, died 3 years ago last week with Alzheimer's. And it was horrible, and I don't want to get it. So I work out every single day. I eat vegetables and fish and chicken. I sleep 9 hours a night. I meditate every single day. And I work full time, sometimes overtime. But recently I was moderating a panel on Alzheimer's with Lauren there. And one of the things that I learned, sadly or fortunately, depending on your circumstances, is that an active sex life is really important to preventing Alzheimer's. So what I would like to propose...
Damn!
Your mother wouldn't like this.
Damn it!
What I would like to propose is starting a online dating service called Sex Against Alzheimer's.
Oh! And you can get Sally's book over there, which is a beautiful story. It also is a heartbreaking story, but a great journalist who wrote a great book. So I want to thank everybody who stood up to do their 66-second wrap. I hope everybody will take out, once again, the WHAM guide that is in your bag there to write down things that you remember from today. Really important. I hope, as I said again, that you'll take it home, look at it, show it to your parents, show it to anybody that you love and care about. I want to thank Nancy again so much for hosting this. I want to thank NASM and AFA for also supporting this, and I look forward to working with you, brought to me by my great friend Natalie Fair. Thank you again, Cole Haan, for your support. I only walk in Cole Haan through the airport and on the shows. I want to thank the Equinox people, Lifetime, all the media people who are here. As you see, we have a lot of work that we can do together. We can, as Sally and Sheila were saying, we can educate people about our financial health, our mental health, our spiritual health, our cognitive health. It all goes together. Talk to our children about this. They are the caregivers on deck, and they are stressed and anxious. So I'm a big believer in talking about uncomfortable subjects, because the more you talk about them, the less they become uncomfortable. And I'm a big believer in passing on at least 1 or 2 tidbits of information. This is a hopeful time in this disease. There's a lot of hope out there. There's a lot of extraordinary doctors on the front lines doing really exciting things. So this is not a hopeless disease anymore. This is an inspired one, a hopeful one, and everybody who passes on this information is an empowered person. So we are going to leave you today with this great friend of mine, Nelson Dellis, who is the memory champion of the world. Okay, the world. He says the U.S., it doesn't matter, the world. Okay, whoever's the memory champion of the world is going to shout me out, America. And he is going to leave you with something you can take today that is going to help your memory across the board today. He came to my house. He'll blow you away with his memory. I can't follow any of it, but I hope you can. So thank you. Here's Nelson Dellis, the memory champion.
Thank you, everyone. I'll try to keep this as short and sweet as possible. I know you guys are ready to get out of here, but I do want to leave something with you, taking what Maria said earlier about having your own toolbox. Memory tools, memory techniques as tools are also things that you can take with you, and these are things that you can learn. Anyone can do them. I started this because my grandmother had Alzheimer's, and she passed away about 10 years ago, and it inspired me to train my memory and start competing in memory competitions. I had no idea that these existed, let alone that I could do what these incredible memorizers could do, memorizing decks of cards, rooms full of names and people's names, big numbers, things like that. So I'm going to impart some of that knowledge on you. There's a lot to it, but the takeaway is that there are things you can do every day to improve your memory as a skill. It's like any other skill. If you work on it a little bit per day, it can actually be strong and efficient. So what I wanted to do was kind of walk you through an example of something you could memorize. The holidays are coming up, so maybe you would have a list of 10 things on a shopping list that you got to buy all your different friends. So what we're going to do, at a very base level, the way memory works, and this is really a big part of understanding memory techniques, is how memory should be understood. One is whatever you're memorizing, you got to turn it into a picture. Our brains work better and remember better pictures rather than the abstract informations like names and numbers, things like that. So any chance you can get, turn it into a picture that you can visualize. Add that sauce to make it a little more colorful, bizarre, weird, and it'll stick even more. And then secondly, and this is really the thing that not many people know, is you can use what our brains are really good at, which is spatial information, understanding space. So if you visualize yourself as you see these pictures around a familiar place like your home, or it could be even this room because we've been here for a couple hours, or your body, you can actually use your body as a place to store these memories. And if you can store these memories somewhere where you know familiarly where they are, you can go back and retrieve them a lot easier. Sounds complicated, it's not. I want to do an example with our bodies. We all have a body, and it goes with us, goes everywhere with us. So what we're going to do is I'll give you these 10 items, I'll walk you through it, and we're going to imagine them as pictures and then place them on different parts of our bodies. We'll imagine them being placed there. And we'll start at the top of our heads and work down to our feet. Some path through our body that is obvious, top to bottom, that's easy, right? And so you can do this when you go out and you have your own list or grocery list, and you can even use your house as these are called memory palaces. So what I want you guys to do is start with your head. So at the top of your head, I want you guys to picture the first thing on your list, which would be this is going to be a very weird list, but follow me, a bottle of vodka, okay? So on top of your head, I just want you to picture, as bizarrely as possible, a vodka bottle right there on top. And if you want to take it further, maybe imagine just actually like crushing that glass bottle over your head, right? Or pouring the vodka all over your head. Something very bizarre, okay? So we can all picture that on our head. Then we walk down to our ears, okay? We're making our way down. And out of our ears, I want you to picture 2 maple leaves just sticking out of your ears. You're getting someone maple leaves. They love to collect leaves. I don't know. And just picture those leaves coming out of your ears. Maybe it's windy. You can imagine them flapping. You can picture the color, right? A real red maple leaf. And then we're going to make our way into our eyes, right? So ears to our eyes. And I want you to picture a hamburger, right? You have someone who loves burgers. You're going to buy them a really delicious burger. And so our picture for that, just picture a burger and slap it on your eye, right? And just like really press it in there. Imagine the grease that would fall out of that, or you have like a tear of mayonnaise, right? So this hamburger on your eye, okay? Then we walk to our nose, our nostrils, and I want you to take 2 chopsticks. That's next on our list, chopsticks. And just shove them up your nose, okay? Very painful, but imagine that they're there and maybe you just live your life with chopsticks up your nose. You can eat sushi with them, everything. You become very dexterous with it. I don't know. You have 2 chopsticks up your nose, okay? We'll walk her down to our mouth. That's the next place. Inside our mouth, I want you to take a soccer ball. That's the next thing on our list, a soccer ball, and just shove it in your mouth. However that's possible. It's not possible, but just imagine how weird that would look with a big soccer ball stuck in your mouth. You couldn't even talk, right? Your face would be huge. So the soccer ball. Then we go down to our chin. Okay, we're about halfway there. And I want you to picture a kangaroo. Kangaroo is going to be the next thing on our list. And so picture a kangaroo literally bouncing on your chin, okay? It's really annoying, painful, whatever, but that kangaroo is just bouncing there, right? We make our way down. Let's go to our armpit. So in our armpit, I want you to picture seeping out of it is some really delicious Indian curry, okay? And maybe you just pour that into a bowl with some rice and it's just delicious, right? Maybe it smells a bit bad because it's coming from the armpit, but it's Indian curry out of the armpit, okay? To our belly button, I want you to picture, and you're going to buy a toy here, a pirate ship, okay? A little pirate ship that I want you to picture in your belly button just kind of coasting along in there. And maybe there's a pirate aboard it. And what does a pirate say? Arg, right? So remember that. So the pirate is in your belly button on the ship saying arg, okay? We're almost done. Go down to your knees. The next thing on your list is a magic wand. Okay? So I want you to picture out of your knee is sticking out one of the traditional black and white magic wands. And if you wave it, it makes this magic sound, kazam. Okay? And you can imagine confetti or sparks flying when you do that. So kazam, out of your knee. And finally, the last thing, maybe this is for someone you don't hate, it's a cup of algae you're getting them for Christmas, say. And I want you to picture that cup of algae just being poured all over your feet. What would that feel like? Kind of gross, slimy, green, right? All that stuff, okay? That's 10 things, very weird things, but let's all together go through that same journey through our bodies top to bottom and see if we can remember that, okay? So what was at the top of our head? Vodka. Then we went down to our ears. What was there? Maple leaves. On our eye? Hamburger. In our nose? Good. In our mouth? Soccer ball. On our chin? Kangaroo. Out of our armpits? The curry in our belly button? Pirate saying, what was he saying? Arg. On the knee? Magic wand. And what was the sound? Kazam. And then onto our feet, what were we pouring? Algae. Very good. Now, this is even cooler because that seems totally random, but those 10 items actually represent something. The 10 largest countries in the world, from largest to 10th largest. So let's see if we can figure that out. Vodka would be Russia, maple leaf, hamburger, USA, yeah. We got to change that image, right? Should be healthier. Chopsticks and the soccer ball, Brazil, maybe Italy, depends who you, but Brazil, and you can change these images if you want, but soccer is Brazil. Kangaroo, curry, India. This one's tough, but the pirate was saying what? Arg, so Argentina. Okay, these are, Argentina might be hard to come up with something, so you can go for something that sounds similar. Kazam, Kazakhstan. Okay, and then algae, any ideas? Algeria, yeah. So there you go. You walk away with two things, learning the 10 largest countries, but also a tool that you can use when you want to remember a list of things. Thank you, guys.
And Nelson has a lot of other tricks. You can find out about his work raising money for Alzheimer's and how he gives you tricks that you can use in your day-to-day work, in your home, remembering the names of the people you met here today, or maybe even remembering the facts. So thank you, Nelson. Once again, thank you to the panel. Thank you to all the rappers. Thank you to the corporations. Thank you to the sponsors. And thank you to the incredible researchers who are doing this work. And thank you to Nancy, who brought us all here. And I hope that all of you will leave here once again, either to join the Women's Alzheimer's Movement on Facebook, on Twitter, like what we're doing, share the articles which are all about empowerment, awareness, and information, spread the word, take this home and share it with at least one other person you know. If we could just educate one other person, the numbers that came out in the poll today with vast majority of people knowing nothing about women's increased risk, knowing nothing about the cost of caregiving, knowing nothing about their vulnerability, young people being terrified to talk to their parents, parents being terrified to talk to their children. Have that conversation. Have the conversation that Sally or Sheila talked about. Have these conversations about caregiving. Look into who actually pays for caregiving, and the answer is you. The answer is you, and that's a financial thing. So I think, as we have said here, this is personal, it's a public health thing, it's a professional thing, it's a private thing, and if you work for a corporation, please ask them to join in on this. Make this an issue. I'm not about taking anything away from breast cancer or AIDS or cancer, but there is room for Alzheimer's because it is the most expensive disease in the United States at this moment. It is on track to bankrupt the nation as we know it. That alone should get political people's attention. It hasn't, but it will. And every single person in here is someone who can change that with a vote, by using your voice at where you live, or by changing the conversation at your kitchen table. And I hope you will join the Women's Alzheimer's Movement in any way you can. Thank you to everybody who has researched women's brains. I hope you spread the word to do it more. And I believe that in my lifetime, it's my birthday on Monday, and I, like Sally, really don't want to get this disease. And I'm not having sex, so I'm on a bad track. So thank you all very much, and have a great day. Bye.